your idea might be, what your solutions might also be, or your questions that you might have. So for the second question, it's a little bit, what tools and opportunities do you see for these groups across Europe and also the whole ECE region to escape poverty? What should be done? And I think let's go to the same order of speakers that we had before. To see a little bit, we now identified the problem, what could be some of the possible solutions, but also the things that may have worked in other countries that we could implement in the region. Swati, the floor is yours to share some of your perspectives, please.
Thank you so much, Johannes, again, and all the panelists for their excellent interventions. It's given a lot of food for thought, also because of our previous discussions together, to see the interlinkages and intersections amongst our struggles, but also the movement and activism that goes on within our spaces, be it in the country of origin or be it in diaspora when it comes to Dalit communities. So I would like to just begin with this leave no one behind principle, which is one of the main principles behind this the conference that we have today. As marginalized communities, oppressed communities, our freedoms are tied with the freedoms of other marginalized communities. And we hear a lot of activists, feminist activists, Black feminist activists from across the world reiterating, transnational women's activist movement, reiterating this, that we have to really build a solidarity movement, a global wild solidarity movement. And I see that as one of the foremost and very strong tool to then create a robust advocacy mechanisms alongside. There are many different ways in which our communities are being marginalized. There are specificities, but at the same time, we see that there is a form of caste system in the Americas, in North America. In fact, one of the scholars, Black scholars, who wrote a book called Caste, the Origins of Our Discontent, to define the racism, the slavery, history of slavery in the Americas, because she found the need to look at racism from a very new perspective, because the moment the term racism was thrown in conversations in America, it was becoming a polarized term. And for her, it was very, very important to have a fresh look at the same problem that is faced by millions of Black African American communities have been formerly enslaved and now live in the North America due to the colonization and slavery. But at the same time, she went around the world looking at, say, the Holocaust that happened in Germany, or Japanese form of caste system, Indian caste system, and she came up with 8 overarching principles of stating that if you look at race as the color of the skin, race as your skin, then class would be the clothes that you wear. And the bones that you have, the skeletal mass of your body, is what is caste. That's what is holding this structure. And we need to go down to the roots of this structure to be able to dismantle it. And so while I talk about this theorization or activist link of this theorization to discern policies, I really, really feel that we need to dive deep into what are these mechanisms and causes and concerns around how our systems of oppressions are so interlinked, be it Haratis, be it Roma communities. For example, Roma communities, in fact, there is a new research that says that there is a genetical link between the Indian untouchables having traveled to, or the nomadic communities in India, having traveled from India, northern part of India, Punjab region, to the Central Europe and through Central Europe. And there is a long-standing history of 1400 years old where Romas have been traveling. And this history is oral history. There is no documentation of it. but they experience similar kind of persecution, similar kind of stigma, similar kind of occupations and descent-based work that they carry out, despite it having gone on for centuries. So the ingrainedness of this system is very much something that I want to highlight. Having said that, there are quite a few advocacy recognitions that have been going on. There are activist spaces, International Dalit Solidarity Network, one of the Europe's biggest network of Dalits, which is invested in doing lobby work with Europe and UK, as a result of which you had in the UK in 2013, and in the same year as European Parliament recognized and created clauses, specific clauses for against caste-based discrimination. You have European Parliament, you have UK, which looked at Enterprises and Regulatory Reform Act to include provisions that would allow legislation addressing specifically caste discrimination. But at the same time, there is a very huge lacuna around implementation. There is also a backlash and pushback from the upper caste communities who say that Hindu minorities are being discriminated. So they use their racial minoritization as a shield to deter or to stop the caste-based discrimination conversations from happening. And it's a very complex matter. In the United States, Johannes, you mentioned about the Cisco, one of the cases that went on 2 years ago was the Cisco discrimination case of employment, where employee filed a case against Indian employer who was of upper caste and experienced caste, the lower caste employee experienced caste discrimination. But this discrimination could not be found or recognized in the contract or policy framework of the company. So right now, what is necessary in Europe or America and other Western countries where caste is becoming a problem, has been becoming a problem, to introduce specific policies to target, recognize caste-based discrimination, to then have data and research around determining what number of population does it affect of South Asians, and creating policies where informal work based on descent, work where labor standards and employment standards are not recognizing the rights of the workers that come from migration background, who may be from lower caste communities, may be from other marginalized communities, how these policies can address that rights of the workers who come from additional intersectional marginalization. So the solidarities amongst the communities and policy-based advocacy are the tools that I would suggest, I would think of as intervention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this really insightful thoughts about tackling the issue. There is so much more to say in a way, and I also feel like very provoked by what you say in terms of taking this further. Maybe just before I give the floor to Sheila, just two thoughts on what you have said also, and then Sheila, you can intervene. What we have seen also is that among civil society, there's something that's norm entrepreneurship happening right now, where the different communities say, we experience this, but we're not called caste, or this is not caste for us. This is called a different thing. Others say this is very clearly caste. And so this how even to call the social stratification that we see in different communities needs also to be named in a way that everyone feels comfortable with, to then advocate for recognition about this global phenomenon. And for now, what has happened is that the stakeholder group of communities discriminated in work and descent has kind of achieved a victory in that as part of the UN resolution 67/290, there is a specific mechanism where a group of stakeholders can kind of intervene and make several statements. And this new stakeholder group of, as I said, communities discriminated in work and descent, which incorporates all of these communities, is part of that. But the process is ongoing, and it's not kind of clear yet who can champion this in terms of countries, because at the UN level also, we need countries to champion this idea to go forward. forward. And before I give the floor to Sheila, Nepal has been a key ally in this, and we will have the Minister of Nepal for Women, Children, and Older People to speak at one of our side events here at the UN to promote this idea about building a global alliance of these communities, and not only as pertinent to Asia, the idea of Dalits, but to recognize all of these communities and create kind of a different category or movement that unites all of them together. I'm so sorry for this slight deviation, but Sheila, your policy insights also are very valued. And you've already brought in your first intervention so much of statistics, and I'm sure you also have further recommendations to make. Please, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Johannes. For this second part, I'm going to be focusing on 3 main EU policies. So the first one being the EU Action Plan Against Racism. So what we're noticing in that action plan is that race is not an issue to be monitored or covered under the EPSR action plan, under the European Pillar of Social Rights Action Plan. But under the EU Action Plan Against Racism, all the issues related to employment, education, health, and housing are linked to the European Pillar of Social Rights. So this is already a small example of how these 2 strategies at EU level are not interlinked. And what we see in the EU Action Plan Against Racism is that there is no class lens. So what we're seeing consistently is that poverty and social exclusion are just fragmented into social policies, and the same thing is happening to anti-racism policies. So like I was saying, the European Pillar of Social Rights Action Plan, it's been in the EU since 2017, and the action plan has been in place since 2020. And it's basically a list of 20 non-binding principles that defines the scope of social rights that EU citizens are entitled to. But there's 2 important things. For instance, there's principle 3, which is equal opportunities. However, under this principle, third country nationals, for instance, are not covered as a characteristic of discrimination. And an example is principle 14, minimum income, so a type of social benefit, where anti-discrimination is a principle, but when there are the targets that are in place to reduce the non-take-up rate, they do not take anti-discrimination into place. And I already mentioned the high non-take-up rates of Roma communities in social benefit. So again, what we're seeing is that there is either a class blindness in anti-racism policies or color blindness in social policies. And this is very problematic. So now going a bit into more detail. So in 2020, the EU launched the Roma strategic framework with specific targets to tackle discrimination faced by the Roma communities. And one of the very interesting targets is, it literally says, cut the poverty gap by at least half, which when you first look at it, it seems very interesting. But then when you think a little bit about it is, first of all, why are we talking about poverty reduction and not eradication? And what does it mean to cut by half? What are the numbers? What is the rate? How will this be achieved? The target is supposed to be achieved by 2030, but what is the rate until then? What is the roadmap to actually achieve that gap? And then national member states at EU level are supposed to set national poverty targets. But again, how will these be set? How will these be distributed amongst the 27 national member states? It's still a question to be answered. There's also 3 employment targets. So they are cut the employment gap by at least half, cut the gender employment gap for Roma by at least half, and cut the gap in the rate of young people not in education, employment, or training by at least half. But again, like I previously mentioned, there's nothing here that talks about quality employment. There's nothing here about how to actually insert the Roma communities in the employment to ensure that they have adequate wages, they have good working conditions, etc. And like we said before, 80% of Roma communities, at least in the survey done by FRA, are are in poverty or social exclusion. And again, the strategic framework does not even mention social benefits. How are we going to tackle poverty if you're not even thinking about providing Roma communities with targeted social benefits? So all in all, we are seeing that there is no intersectionality in these strategies, and that even though the Roma strategic framework is a huge achievement because it was just implemented in 2020, and I know Roma grassroots organizations have been advocating for this for a long time, it's clearly that the strategy is class blind. When it comes to housing, for instance, there's also some targets on housing, but there's not even a mention of housing segregation or the forced evictions that Roma community face. And then the targets on healthcare, this is the part I'm very much interested and a bit frustrated about, is cut the life expectancy gap by at least half. What does it mean to cut the life expectancy gap? Like, the life expectancy has so many implications. Like, our life expectancy depends on our access to quality food, our access to energy, because if we don't have access to energy, we cannot cook food, we cannot have a warm bath. It also implicates about our housing conditions. Are we living into leaky roofs? Are we living on the street, etc.? It also implicates about early childhood care. Do Roma communities have access to early childhood care? It's been proven that they don't. Do Roma children have access to vaccinations, etc.? So this target, it seems very good at first, but it's really, in my perspective and in European perspective, it's just a target to say that we are tackling this, but there's still some lack of political will and concrete measures, because if either we tackle everything at the same time with specific goals and resources, otherwise, how are we going to cut the life expectancy gap by at least half? And also we need to understand that health has a snowball effect. For us to be healthy, we need to be healthy to be able to work. We need to be healthy to be able to go to school. We need to be healthy to be able to cook and eat. If we're not healthy, we cannot have a job, and if we cannot have a job, we cannot have access to income. So it's really a snowball effect, and these targets really need to be more specific. And lastly, just to share the recommendations. So, like I said, there's clearly a lack of political commitment, and although there are many strategies in place, the EU strategic framework, the gender equality, the anti-racism, etc., they're clearly not interlinked, and there's many intersectional gaps. So what we recommend at TAPN is that there's a need for a better and integrated approach. So we ask the EU that it implements, it monitors, and it reviews through a coordinated approach the EU equality action plans, and that there is adequate funds and appropriate national budgets to meet the desired goals and targets. And most importantly, there needs to be impact assessments of these action plans. And these impact assessments need to be done by the people who are the recipients of these policies. So if the Roma strategic framework needs to have impact assessment with the Roma communities. I think it's also very important that we combat the political hate speech against the Roma community and other racialized communities. And of course, we need to tackle the stigmatization that Roma communities and institutionalized racism that it's faced in Europe. And like I previously said, also, we need to make sure that Roma communities have access to justice, because they're clearly a target of discrimination in many levels of life. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much for this deep analysis, and also the really concrete pointed suggestions based on the existing frameworks that exist. Because I think that's also something we need to take into account. Some of the issues are kind of looked at, but not in a comprehensive way, and some of them are still being invisibilized. So thank you very much for this deep analysis. And I'll now give to Diko Hanoune. Et j'aimerais bien un peu demandez-vous sur l'expérience en Europe, parce que vous avez déjà dit dans votre première intervention qu'il y a les problèmes graves en Mauritanie, c'est pas reconnu, les communautés et tout ça. Et aussi, je crois qu'on pourrait mentionner ici qu'une personne, un parlementaire en Mauritanie a perdu son immunité parlementaire pour parler justement sur ce thème de Haratin. Mais c'est quoi la solution alors dans les pays en Mauritanie, mais en fait, encore, qu'est-ce qu'on pourrait faire dans les pays comme France, comme l'Union européenne, et aussi nous comme la région, comme nous sommes dans la région de l'Europe du Nord et aussi de l'Amérique. Qu'est-ce que c'est le rôle de l'autre pays pour faire la pression sur la Mauritanie, et comment on pourrait aussi faire un collectif avec les autres communautés pour avoir les solidarités, parce qu'on sait en fait qu'en solidaire, ensemble, on est très fort.
Merci, Johannes. J'ai écouté les interventions de nos deux sœurs, Swati Kamble et Sheila Habib. Je vous remercie. Vous savez, les premiers outils qu'on devrait avoir pour combattre ces injustices, c'est d'abord, il faudra qu'on se ligue pour mettre la pression aux États africains, particulièrement à la Mauritanie, pour qu'il y ait un état de droit. Premier outil, c'est d'abord instaurer des états de droit, pas de dictatures. Là où nous en sommes, nous n'avons que des dictatures. Et c'est très compliqué de demander des droits à des dictatures, à des pays où il y a des dictatures. C'est pratiquement mission impossible. Je pense que le deuxième outil qui peut servir tout le monde, toutes les communautés de CDWD, est de se battre pour qu'il y ait une résolution qui va protéger ces communautés. Quand il y a une résolution, ça concerne tous les pays membres des Nations Unies. Et maintenant, qui doit ratifier cette résolution pour ouvrir des droits à toutes les communautés discriminées, victimes de discrimination par ascendance et au travail. Je pense que ça, c'est des outils les plus nécessaires pour qu'on arrive à avancer. Maintenant, je vais vous donner des informations. Parce que j'ai remarqué dans les discours, quand on parle souvent, par exemple, de la colonisation, on pense que c'est toute l'Afrique qui est victime de colons. Non, il y a des complices. Ce n'est pas tous les Africains qui sont victimes de l'esclavage. Non, il y a des complices. Ce n'est pas les Blancs qui partaient chercher les Noirs pour les vendre. C'était les Noirs qui partaient chercher les Noirs qui les vendaient aux Blancs. Il faut que les choses soient très claires. Il y a des bourreaux parmi les Africains. C'est pour cela qu'ils ne veulent pas que les choses changent. Ils ne veulent pas qu'on parle de ça. Dès qu'on parle de ça, ça fâche les gens puissants. La vérité est qu'aujourd'hui, l'Afrique est entre les mains de ses complices qui étaient là. Lorsque le colon est parti, il a placé ses complices. Et c'est ces complices aujourd'hui qui tiennent l'Afrique par une main de fer. C'est pour ça que l'Afrique ne peut pas se développer. Ils sont encore sous la colonisation par intermédiaire. J'entends beaucoup qui nous disent, oui, l'Afrique est victime de la colonisation. L'Afrique est victime de l'esclavage. D'accord? Mais imaginez-vous, après la colonisation, 63 ans plus tard, on n'a que 2 pays. Et encore, il fallait forcer ces pays à avoir des lois pour combattre l'esclavage. 2 pays. La Mauritanie, où on a fait presque 50 ans de combat pour avoir une loi. 50 ans. Et le deuxième pays, c'est le Niger. Le Niger, ils ont une loi, mais encore, elle n'est pas très sévère. Mieux encore, quand vous avez des lois, ces lois ne sont pas faites pour être appliquées. Elles sont là pour tromper les bailleurs de fonds, pour tromper les institutions internationales. Donc, c'est ça qui fait que les communautés CDWD en Afrique sont encore plus que discriminées. C'est-à-dire, elles n'existent pas encore. Elles sont là, elles existent physiquement, on les voit, mais institutionnellement, officiellement, vous ne trouvez pas leurs traces. Elles n'existent pas. Il y en a un intervenant, je crois que c'est Navan Gotham, il a posé la question un petit peu, quelle est la différence entre la communauté CDWD et les discriminations. En grosso modo, et les problèmes des minorités. En grosso modo, il y a en Mauritanie, les communautés victimes de discrimination par ascendance et au travail sont plus nombreuses. Elles sont plus nombreuses parce qu'on les trouve, c'est les Arabes, c'est les Berbères, c'est les autres ethnies noires, Pulaar, Soninké, Wolof. Et la plupart du temps, quand vous regroupez toutes ces communautés, presque vous êtes à 70% de la population. Maintenant, la hiérarchie de la communauté, presque 30, 35 maximum. Vous voyez, donc ce sont les victimes qui sont plus nombreuses. C'est pour cela qu'il y a une différence entre le problème des minorités, la protection des minorités et la protection des communautés victimes par ascendance et au travail. Et autre chose que je voulais communiquer, en Europe, ceux qui viennent ici, la communauté CDW africaine qui n'a pas la facilité d'immigrer parce qu'ils n'ont pas les moyens. Les vraies victimes sont restées. Nous sommes un petit peu une goutte d'eau dans la mare. Tout ce que vous voyez là, immigration, etc., c'est pratiquement des gens ici de ces communautés qui étaient soit complices avec les colons, qui sont favorisés, qui ont des nationalités par héritage, ou je ne sais pas, ou qui ont été scolarisés, qu'on autorise à venir. Maintenant, les vrais, ceux qui n'ont rien, ce sont ceux qui meurent dans les mers, dans les océans, qui veulent venir parce qu'ils n'ont pas les moyens. Ils utilisent les moyens terrestres. Mais les vrais qui sont installés, qui sont bien en Europe, qui, à chaque fois qu'il y a une télévision qui s'ouvre, ils viennent et disent que nous sommes de l'Afrique, nous sommes victimes, nous sommes ceci, nous sommes cela. En réalité, ce n'est pas vrai. C'est du cinéma. Ils sont victimes. Mais quand ils sont là-bas, ils ne sont plus victimes. Ce sont les bourreaux. Parce que là-bas, ils ne veulent pas donner des droits aux communautés CDWD. Ils ne veulent pas. Ils ne veulent pas qu'on en parle. Ils ne veulent pas qu'on parle de l'égalité. Mais quand ils sont ici en Europe, ils parlent de l'égalité. Ils veulent être égaux avec les Européens. Ils veulent être égaux avec les Américains. C'est très bien, mais pourquoi quand vous êtes chez vous, vous ne voulez pas ça? Il y a un problème. Donc, c'est pour cela que c'est très compliqué. Alors, je ne veux pas monopoliser la parole, mais je pense que aujourd'hui, le premier combat que nous devrons tous faire, c'est surtout les communautés CDW de l'Europe, de l'Asie, les Dalits. Dieu merci, ils ont des droits. De l'Inde et de tous ces continents, des autres continents, doivent élever la voix vers l'Afrique et dire que ce n'est pas possible. La communauté CDW africaine doit avoir des droits garantis par les États africains. On ne peut pas dire que nous sommes victimes, nous sommes ceci, nous sommes cela, nous sommes victimes de la colonisation, nous sommes victimes de l'esclavage. Tous les jours, ils les chantent. Mais le problème, c'est que mais pourquoi, quand toi, tu es victime de quelque chose, quand tu as le pouvoir, tu ne peux pas faire une loi pour interdire ça? Pourquoi? C'est là le problème. Je pense que je m'arrête là, j'attends les questions. Désolé, merci.
Merci beaucoup, Diko. Plusieurs choses que vous avez dit, c'est très intéressant. Mais j'aimerais bien donner la parole maintenant à une membre d'audience. On a plusieurs personnes là, mais une personne a indiqué qu'il voudrait parler. So, Michael Demetri, can he be made co-host, please, so you can unmute his microphone, because currently, yeah, now here you go. Please, Michael Demetri, you have the floor.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to attend this meeting. My name is Michel Dimitri. I am from Sweden, Stockholm. I am the president of the Roma Rights International Federation. I just like to say something because you asked what we recommend to do to reduce the poverty, and I am speaking about the Roma here in Sweden. Here in Sweden, there is not many Roma people who has work. There is quite a few one. And the thing is that those Roma people who has work, their salary wage is it's below the others who are working on the same company or in the same team, or so it's not equal. So that is a big problem. I used to say that we are facing exploitation, but you was asking to how can we reduce this, and I believe one very important key factor is that we need to get in the politics, because the Roma people, and now I mean from the local to national to European level, we are not represented, and there was someone who was saying that we can clearly see that there is none political will to combat all this structural anti-Ziganism, and I really think that if we don't get in the politics, then we will just be on the same spot, so there will not be any better, so to say. But the thing is that the political parties, they don't allow us in their societies, they don't do that. So I don't know really how we can come in there and try to make a difference. So this is just a little thought that I had, because I know I don't have much time. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Michael. I think it's a really good point, and I think some of the questions, let's say, and maybe our panelists have a little bit of an answer to in their closing intervention that we will have now, and some reflecting thoughts to close. But I think what you say is quite right. I think political ownership, political participation, and also political power is not equally distributed, and doesn't kind of reflect the needs and the priorities, and this leaves behind. And most of the time, all these communities that we have mentioned. Now, for a short closing statement, I want to come back to one of the panelists one last time, and maybe if you can, 2 or 3 things, like short things that we take away from this panel to implement or to do, also to think about going forward. I don't want to put anyone on the spot, so maybe who is ready to come up with these 2 or 3 things to take away from this event. Please, Sheila, go ahead.
Thank you, Johannes. I would say 2 things. First of all, we cannot talk about eradicating poverty in Roma communities without talking to the Roma communities themselves. So having active participation of Roma communities in the implementation, in the monitoring of policies, first of all. And the second thing is we really need to tackle this discrimination and this idea that Roma communities are the scapegoat of their misery, that they're lazy, that they're unworthy of help, etc. Because if society sees them that they don't deserve support, then why would their problems be a problem to be solved? So I'll end with that.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Swati. Go ahead.
Yeah, I reckon with what Sheila has said, active participation definitely of the communities to tackle the prejudices. I also wanted to reiterate what Diko said, that South Asian communities who were formerly colonized are not a monolithic whole. much like in Africa, the people that are a person of color, that is the term that they get when they come to Western context. Brown folks are not a monolithic whole. So that needs to be recognized in the policy, that people that represent the South Asian communities, represent institutions, are heading institutions, are representing in the political sphere as well, happen to be from upper caste locations and may not have interests of the lower caste communities at heart. So even if we say it's a welcoming thing that a person of South Asian origin is now a Prime Minister of United Kingdom, we need to see what are the ramifications of their politics and policy and their caste location as well. So that is something that I think Europe and Western community world has to wake up to, because that's what again creates these policies that are very simplistic and do not take into account the intersections, and that's also then foreground or even reinforce the prejudices. So I think that's one point that I would like to leave here. And also the stigma and scapegoating of the Dalit communities continue. So I reiterate Sheila's points, and think it is very, very important to have political participation, active political participation for the communities to be able to represent themselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Swati, for your points. I think also very, very relevant. And now we come to the last panelist, to Diko Hanoune, once more, with like 2 or 3 things that we should also take away from this event. And after his intervention, I would like all of us to quickly switch on our cameras, have a quick wave, and we take like a group picture of this event if everyone's okay with that, to take away from this as well. So Hanoune, Diko, over to you, and then we will switch on the cameras for a quick group picture. Please, the floor is yours.
Merci, merci. Moi, j'aimerais revenir à ce qu'a dit notre frère Michel Dimitri au CIED, que apparemment ils n'ont pas le même salaire. C'est dommage. Et en plus, sa recommandation a attiré mon attention. C'est très important. Il a dit qu'il faudra qu'on fasse la politique. Vous savez, les amis, ce qu'il a dit, c'est vrai. Il faudra qu'on arrive à nous introduire en politique. D'ailleurs, Johannes a voulu m'interpeller dès le début en voulant parler de Biram Dabeid, qui est un député. Hein, on l'accuse juste d'avoir diffamé un chef de parti. Et puis, tout de suite, on l'a déshabillé de son immunité, alors que pour enlever l'immunité d'un député, il faut vraiment que ça soit quelque chose de très grave, un crime, ou il faut que ça soit du flagrant délit qu'il est en train de faire, déstabiliser le pays. Vous savez, on a beau faire de la politique aussi, mais des fois, même si on est élu par les citoyens, par des voies normales, ceux qui sont au-dessus sont tellement forts, ils nous écrasent toujours. Mais en Europe, quand même, je pense que c'est important, quand il y a des élections, qu'on arrive à mobiliser notre électorat pour peser, pour imposer certaines choses. Parce que si on veut que les Roms soient respectés, par exemple en France, il faut que nous soyons organisés. Il faut que nous essayons d'avoir des candidats sur lesquels on peut compter. Ou dans le programme des partis politiques, on va essayer de leur proposer des choses. Celui qui va prendre nos revendications, on pourra influencer, faire en sorte de lobby pour voter ces candidats, pour que les communautés CDWD, Rome, africaine, tout ce que vous voulez, on mobilise nos réseaux. On va voter pour ces partis. Aujourd'hui, je prends juste l'exemple de nos frères juifs. Ils ne sont pas nombreux en France. mais ils sont très puissants parce qu'ils ont des consignes de vote très importantes. Quand ils disent, quand ton candidat fait le fou, essaye de les insulter, ils vont tout faire pour te faire perdre. Mais quand ton candidat prend leurs problèmes en charge, ils vont tout faire pour le faire gagner. C'est tout simplement ça. Si je prends l'exemple des immigrés en France, presque 10 millions. C'est ça, hein, entre 8 et 10 millions. Vous imaginez entre 8 et 10 millions de voix, si on n'arrive pas à les faire respecter, c'est parce que les gens, ils ne votent pas. Ils ne votent pas du tout. Hein. Les partis qui sont là, les partis de l'extrême droite, hein, qui sont là tous les jours, immigrés ceci, immigrés cela, Rome ceci, Rome cela, Rome voleur, Rome ceci, ces gens-là, s'ils savaient que les 10 millions de voix ne partent pas chez eux, ils ne vont pas les dire. Ils n'oseront jamais s'attaquer. Quand les Suédois savent qu'il y a 10 millions de voix en France, plus peut-être 5 millions de voix en Italie, 40 millions, je dis comme ça, hein, en Roumanie, tout ce monde-là est contre eux, ils vont essayer de régler le problème. Ils vont pas embaucher désormais un Romain à 10 € et on se doit à 15 €. Ils vont essayer d'harmoniser. Il y a des lois. Non, non, nous, on n'accepte pas. S'il y avait quand même des députés qui montaient au Parlement suédois qui dénonçaient cette situation, ils vont arrêter. Mais c'est que nous n'avons pas de voix. Il nous faut des voix qui portent nos revendications au plus haut niveau. Désolé, j'ai plus beaucoup de temps. Merci.
Pas du tout, Diko, merci beaucoup et pour cet appel potent à l'action vraiment et l'action collective de toutes les communautés qui ont une expérience partagée. Now, if we can put on the cameras while we kind of wrap up and take a group picture, and while I kind of also want to give my kind of message of closing in this thing. Thank you, Alima. Also, please feel free to put the camera. Also, we have Safia, Malak, Alima, Renata, and many others. Please feel free to camera for one concluding picture. And I think what I want maybe to say is solidarity amongst the communities is really important to maintain in all of the different aspects, be it campaigning, be it political activism, be it all of that, to strengthen their own voices, but also extend the solidarity to others who may not have this voice or who may have less of a voice due to the political context or other restrictions. And we will take a picture in 3, 2, 1 second. Just pop something up. 1. Now we did it. Thank you very much all for your kind attention and for your time. It has been such a pleasure to have you as part of this event and to have really such a stimulating discussion that provokes so much in terms of individual activism in the country, in the community, but also extending solidarity to others and all the great mechanisms that already exist, the frameworks in Europe in particular that we have heard about that are there, but they need to definitely expand, reform, and go beyond what they currently offer. So thank you very much. I would also like to mention briefly our next side event that happens with, I can maybe briefly, if I manage to share my screen, with the Minister of Nepal for Women, Children, and Older Persons, as well as with representatives from UNDP. Yeah, this is it. And where we have a representative from Roma, a representative from Africa, Queen, and from South America, we have Veseleni representing the Quilombola community, and we have Bina Palikal, who is a Dalit representative, together with the minister from Nepal and UNFPA, as well as UNDP, UN Women representative. So this is happening on Wednesday, the 13th. We will share the link in the show notes, let's say via email afterwards with all of you. Thank you again for attending and have a great rest of the day. Take care and goodbye.
Merci beaucoup.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye.